There are only a couple of events each year in the off-campus student housing industry that brings all of the industry leaders together. The premier event for the industry is the Interface Student Housing Conference in Austin, Texas. For 2021, this event was held in mid-July and brought nearly 1,200 attendees and a complete who's who list of executives from the management and development firms under one roof at the JW Marriott in Austin for 3 days of sessions, roundtables, and networking. Student Housing Insight took the opportunity to sit down with 3 CEOs from those firms to discuss their outlook on the industry, how the pandemic has shaped leasing and marketing strategies, and opportunities they see for service and product providers. So buckle up for some amazing insight. This is Student Housing Insight's annual episode of From the Top. Well, Alex, Donna, Loren, thanks so much for taking some time out today from the Interface Conference to talk to the Student Housing Insight audience. You guys within this industry are certainly names, and your company names are ones that are very well known within the industry, and really looking forward to getting some insight from you guys. You know, our audience within Student Housing Insight is primarily the on-site players within our industry, the guys that are in the ditches and trenches and getting things done. And one of the things that I set out when I started this podcast was to create some content that really kind of showed the other side of the business, the finance, the investing, and showing them what's on the other side of being on site and in those positions. And you know, there's only a few times of the year that we get to be under the same roof together, as far as the key leaders and the executives within this industry. Interface is one of them, and we haven't had this conference in 2 years, so it's great to be back and see everybody's face. We've got a small crowd here that's with us live as we are recording this, and it's great to see everybody, and looking forward to the remaining days in this conference and some of the relationships that, quite honestly, I think I've kind of forgotten about over the past 2 years with not being able to see everybody. Let me ask you guys this, since we're on the subject of the conference. How many of you guys have ever brought like a site level or regional level manager to this specific conference? Is that something you guys do or have ever? I'm getting no's for yeah. I've certainly seen you guys bring crowds to this one. You know, this is one I would suggest to the audience, if you've got if you're looking at expanding your career beyond the on-site level, make it a goal to get to this conference. I don't think it's certainly not the cheapest, and not every property is going to be able to afford it, but it is certainly one that, if it's your goal to grow within this industry, I think that this is one that you got to put on your calendar to get to. They're not going to get here if we continue to have it in July. We're going to have it. That's right. in April, but anyway, real quick. Obviously, I've introduced you guys, but if you'll go through and give a little bit of information on your company and what you guys have been involved with in the student housing industry. Alex, we'll start with you.
Sure, thanks. Alex O'Brien, the CEO of Cardinal Group, based in Denver, Colorado, and operations all over the U.S. Really set out 15 years ago to come into the student housing industry with a focus on creating a place that was great to work. And that's been kind of our true north from the beginning, and something that's really helped us grow and helped us achieve our goals. So at this point, we're north of about 90,000 beds. We work in a lot of different sectors, from management, investment, construction, marketing. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really blessed to lead just an amazing team. The Cardinal culture has just attracted so many amazing people, both on site, at the regional level, at the senior operations level. So thanks for having me here today. I know this must have been a committee of one to name top CEOs, so I don't, thank you for voting me that way, Wes. I appreciate it.
Donna?
Well, Preiss Company's been around since 1987, and probably the first half of the company's life, we were doing small investments, and it was probably in the late 90s that we got involved in student housing, and we're currently up slightly north of 35,000 beds. We have a footprint of 24 states. One of the biggest problems we've had this year is holding on to property. I mean, with the cap rates compressing, our partners, are seeing they want to monetize their gains, and we find that to be incredibly difficult for site staff. It's almost like you're working yourself out of a job. But the bottom line is that the next 2 years, our industry is going to see incredible growth.
I'm looking forward to talking about it. Loren?
Wes, thanks for having me. My name's Loren King. I'm the CEO of Trinitas Ventures. Our mission is creating exceptional real estate. And since 2002, we've been focused on developing best-in-nation, best-in-class student housing. A little over 2 years ago, we moved into a core adjacency and are also now developing university-centric student housing anchored mixed-use development with our flagship project in that area right now in Cincinnati, Ohio, which should close this fall, adjacent to our existing student housing project called the Deacon that's been extraordinarily successful in that market. So we invest, develop, build, and manage student housing as our core. And currently, we're aimed at developing about $350 million, about 4 starts this fall, with the expectation to continue to grow our development volume in the years to come.
Awesome. Well, so let's kind of get back a little bit to what Donna was talking about, and the past 5 years, and I really put that between 2015 and 2020. Obviously, we saw a huge slowdown in 2020. When it did come to transactions, but I want to kind of get to look at the next 5 years and what that's going to look like as far as growth, and bringing that back to the on-site employees. Do you think, because a lot of times, I know Adam was on a recent webinar that we did from the Preiss Company, and we talked a little bit about when Adam and I were coming through this, like, we were getting advanced very quickly when it came to going through on-site positions and ultimately into leadership positions. And thank goodness for patient folks like Donna that were able to put up with us just learning the ropes, authoring what those ropes were even made out of when we were diving into this 20 years ago. But I kind of look at what happened in 2020 and focusing on what's the outlook for the next 5 years and what kind of opportunity that's going to create, or maybe not create, that we've seen in the past for on-site employees. So I don't know who wants to take a stab at that first, but
I'm not sure what that meant, but I'll go. You didn't call me a name, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I deferred.
Okay. Well, first of all, the past 20 years we've all been learning, so we were all learning together. And I think that's what makes student housing so exciting, is that, it continues to evolve, and we're continuing at this pandemic accelerated that evolution, and we're going to see lots of paradigm shifts that, we right now probably don't even recognize. But I look at it, and I think that there's some really good things that are happening right now. And one of it, you hear a lot of people talk about this difficulty in finding staff, but I think that that's a good thing. We actually have not been affected by that at this point, but if we did not make some changes, we probably would be. But if you look at it, we really have had a K. We talk a lot about this K economy, and if you look at your companies, there's probably a median point at which, up this point and above, your folks are doing incredibly great. But there's medium and down, they haven't necessarily had a lot of income growth. In fact, if you take out for inflation, a lot of site folks haven't seen really any increases at all. So I think what the pandemic did is, and there's a quote. Forbes has called this the Great Resignation. You know, we had global recession. They're calling this the Great Resignation, and all these people are resigning. And I think what it does is it gives, you know, people are thinking a lot more about all of this. And what it's going to do is it's upon us to, when I hear people say, I can't find anybody, I'm thinking, well, what are you paying them? And under what conditions are they working? And we're all going to have to improve all that. And we're going to have to figure out how we get our partners to, you know, agree to do that. And I think that what that will do, though, is we will probably reduce the amount of staff that we have, but that they're going to be better educated, have more skill sets, and they're going to be paid more. I've got other ideas, but I'll let these guys throw in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, Donna. And it almost feels like the industry's going from sophomore to junior year, you know, to use collegiate terms. But there's just a major maturation that's happening across the industry. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And I think it's going to provide a ton of opportunity. I think Donna hit it right on the head with, like, upskilling, like a focus on L&D. Like, just the whole industry is coming from this, you know, as Wes said, this kind of like battlefield promotion, like, hey, you're young, you want to be the manager? It's like, sure, I'll be the manager. It's like, that's just changing. And I think the exciting thing is we're going into the maturation of our industry, which is going to focus on skill development, hopefully transferable skills that our on-site teams can take with them to other jobs. That we're going to focus on, you know, the advancements in technology, which are going to provide a lot of efficiency and get rid of a lot of the bullshit work that we do, but also almost increase engagement and enjoyment of the job. So, you know, with the growth of our sector, I think the thing to focus on is the maturation that usually occurs in sectors with growth. And that should benefit our on-site teams. And to Donna's point, it's going to be disproportionate in terms of like how that happens. But overall, I think it's going to be a really big positive for our industry and our industry's ability to attract talent and to say, we're not offering you a job, we're offering you a career. And in a lot of ways, property management has always been a temporary job. And I think we can start to get away from that and really show people there's careers all over this industry that pay great, that are challenging, that are useful skills. And I think it's a lot of really exciting things to come in the next 5 years.
Loren?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of the sentiment. And if I'm thinking in terms of advice that I could give to, you know, on-site staff in terms of, you know, their career advancement and the opportunity, it's make sure you essentially hitch your wagon, you know, to the right company. And I don't think it's all companies are not created equal. I think there are some that are significantly more focused on driving a healthy culture and on the leadership and development that Alex mentioned. And, you know, I'll brag on Alex for a second. I know that his firm is highly focused on employee engagement and driving culture because I hear about it from, you know, some Trinitas alum. That's a whole nother conversation.
You're not supposed to talk to those people anymore.
Maybe it's a little bit of a sore spot, but no, it's I know we are at Trinitas are extremely focused on it. And so all companies are not created equal. And so look for that and look for a company that's growing because there's always going to be more opportunity in a company that's growing and that has momentum. And look for a company that cares about its people, that is really investing in their people. And I think a lot of that was seen, you know, during 2020. You know, the companies, I think the challenges of COVID really separated firms in terms of how they approach the problem solving when they're folks in the front lines. And our site staff were on the front lines. They couldn't go remote.
Yeah.
Right, and that put us folks in a leadership position, you know, back safe in the corporate office in a really tough position.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, that caring mentality, I think, really, you know, shined or didn't shine.
Yeah. Do you see, because you work primarily in the development space, and, you know, and that was my background. You know, I worked for a small merchant developer, and, you know, we had 1 or 2 projects a year, and, you know, you focused on that. I got to see everything from cradle to grave. And that exposed me to a lot and gave me a perspective that I think a lot of the folks that were coming up on the operation side along the same time that I was, that they didn't get that. And I've always been, just humbled by that experience of being able to do that. I'm wondering, with, as you're looking into the next 5 years and projects that are in your pipeline, do you see that availability, folks that are currently on site that can make that transition over onto the development side if they choose to stay in student housing with you guys?
It's a great question. We love it when we have folks that can make a cross-functional, cross-team move, and it has happened occasionally. Though being honest, it hasn't happened. It doesn't happen often, and it would need to be very intentionally planned, and that's where we are working on training our supervisors better at having those career-oriented conversations with their team, so they can facilitate those kind of opportunities. It certainly hasn't happened often, but we love it when we see it.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead, Donna. No, I'll add in after you.
Well, I was just going to say we've had some good luck with that, and you do need to be able, to have the folks be able to figure out that where their career growth is going to come, and also, the development, new business jobs. Those are all sort of plum assignments. People like those, or at least they think they're going to like them. So, and I know you guys do concentrate on this too, really concentrate on organic growth. And so people have said a lot of times, what is it you think is the magic that, that none of your people ever leave and your people seem happy? And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out, and I think at the end of the day, it was the fact that our folks, it's the organic growth. And so basically it wasn't that necessarily anything we did after the fact. It's that we probably hired, most of our folks started working with us when they were interns. And in fact, our new business development group, which is sort of the plum assignments, only a couple of those people were not organically grown. And, and I think that they're the best in the industry, and we continually get, compliments from our institutional partners about how good they are. So I know that that they're strong, but that is important, that they're able to see that they can move off a site if they want to. Sometimes people move off site and decide they want to go back.
Yeah, and I think we need to help our on-site teams remember that it's great to be on site. I think sometimes we make it this once you get to HQ or once you get to corporate, and then it almost creates this divide of HQ's above, right? We had to work during the pandemic, you guys got to go back and it was safe, and it's kind of this us versus them. And I think that's happened in our industry forever. It was leasing versus maintenance, and then it's corporate versus on-site. But I think good cultures have to really work to break down those divides, have to work at how you bring people together. And I think one of the ways you can bring people together is, one, focus on transferable skills, and that the skills that we're training and helping develop our on-site teams are not just applicable if you want to get into development, they're applicable to get into a bunch of careers. You're literally in customer experience and customer service every single day on the most important decision someone makes, which is their housing. So it's that's super important. You're managing small teams. You're actually dealing with the physical real estate, and so much that you can learn from that. So, I spend a lot of my time, my personal time, which is not a lot, with transitioning veterans. So this is something near and dear to my heart, which is, how do you help someone take all of their experience and apply it to future career opportunities? And as an industry, we have to do a much better job than that. We can't make people believe that because you're a community manager, the only job you have left in your career is to be a regional. There's so much you can do with that experience of leading teams. And I think that's what we have to do a better job of, and stop creating this, here's corporate and then on-site. And the only goal of on-site is to someday get off-site. It's no. On-site is amazing. It's you're in the field leading a small team of people, directly touching the residents. We need to celebrate that and remind them that these skills and this experience is super valuable for your future career opportunities, and not this it's a prison sentence. You're just doing time until you get to corporate. It's that is just the death sentence of our industry. We have to stop that like dialogue around that.
I talk to people every day that's been in this industry for multiple years, and when someone's at a regional level or above, I guess that's the best way of describing it. It is. I haven't met a one that has not said, "Yeah, man, I wish I could just go back on site." It was
Right.
not that it was easier. It was just they were able to put things, into buckets that allowed them to make a further impact. Is the way I kind of took it, and
Well, we have to pay them. I mean, that really says a lot. I mean, we can say we want it to be fun to be on site, but we have to pay those folks that are on site comparable kinds of dollars, and we do that. And you're right. I mean, the regional has to travel a lot more. If the regional's not making a lot more money, then you could say, why don't I just stay on site? But I think that's something that you have to, one of the things we talk about all the time in our executive team is basically the execution of the property management. That's the product that we create. I mean, we also develop, and we, not as much as you do, but we develop more now than we ever did, and we acquire and we manage. But nobody really is going to call the Preiss company to be a developer. They're not going to call us probably to, we want you to go out and find and acquire. They're really hiring us because we can execute on the property management.
Yeah.
We can develop a business plan and execute to it. So what we're always saying is that those folks on the site, that is what we do.
Yeah.
And so everybody else is in a position to support them. And our executive team probably hears that from me so much that I think sometimes it sort of is not.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but it's the reality for all of us, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of transition now to start talking about my next question that I had, which is on the leasing part, because those site employees, a lot of what they do is living and dying on what's happening from a leasing perspective, and it's not just the site employees. Our contracts with our lenders and investors, it all comes down to what's happening from a leasing standpoint. And I think the industry weathered things very well. I've been very I was optimistic just because, I went through the whole, 2008 recession and saw this industry weather that very well. And so I think all of us, on those phone calls last March and April, telling ourselves, we're going to get through this. Like, this is, but I think we all went home thinking, okay, are we going to get through this? But I think we did. And but I wanted to ask you guys, as far as it goes with leasing and what you've learned over the past year, is there anything that you and your teams are talking about as far as changes that are going to be made, either they were made during the pandemic, or maybe you've kind of inched towards changing that may just change forever?
I think COVID, I don't know if it changed much, but it accelerated a lot. I think that's the way we kind of looked at COVID, and it provided this excuse to speed up a lot of changes that we already saw happening. And I mean, there's no doubt that as an industry, we have to embrace change. And we've done that. And obviously, Donna, you've seen it firsthand from a successful career of running the Preiss company, and you guys have done a great job of always kind of staying a leader as other companies have kind of come and gone. And the way you do that is that you have to not just be innovative, but you have to embrace that change. And I think that it's pretty clear that there's going to be a heavy dose of AI technology and kind of adjusting how what have historically been on-site job functions will now start to shift into what could be off-site or regional or virtual. I know a few companies. I know Scion did a really nice job of rolling out a consolidated national leasing center, and kudos to those guys for kind of being innovative and taking a risk there to kind of ahead of the curve. But I think that you'll start seeing that more broadly because we have the technology and we have the ability to train people, and it all comes down to, can we deliver what the resident wants? That's all we do in our business, and we think about, right? So we don't start with, should we make a bunch of changes? We start with the resident in mind and say, does the resident want a more heavy focused digital experience? Does the resident want a more video or virtual focused? And we have found the answer to be yes. And I think that a lot of what we were required to roll out in COVID to still interact with those residents, we saw those things coming. And again, we just felt like it accelerated that. And I think that you're going to see that more and more, and it'll become industry norm, much sooner than we were probably expecting pre-COVID.
Well, it's sort of you asked a great question, and that is what does the resident want? And one of the things that's really good for what we do is that we do have a lot of students that work for us, so we do get that feedback, and that's really helpful. But it's like, so what we picked up last year was that we were going to do less touches, during turn and and we found that that worked, really well. If you think about it now, a lot of the hotels people come into, they do it with their iPads and that sort of thing. And this generation is so adept at doing all that. And they don't really want a lot of interaction and conversation. See, with me, this scares me to death because normally I still brought my big notebook. But the idea
She's referring to her phone.
the idea that I would actually put my notes on this just scares me to death because I'm thinking, well, the battery goes up. When I first came in here, it didn't download and all this. Well, this group is so far ahead of us. And so, like we were doing a site tour this morning, we're looking at doing a development here. And so the question was, well, is it important to see when they come into the leasing office, should you have somebody sitting there in the front of the leasing office? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, of course, because you always want somebody to greet you, right? Then I start thinking, but wait a minute, I don't know if these students really do. They may prefer that it was, that they've already planned the thing on their phone, they've done all those things. So part of it is that's a hard thing to do, is to figure out what it is they do value, and take it from there. But basically, I think the technology is going to be the secret, so many different things like the Calendly, which is an app, but there's tons of these apps that, so the students, they go ahead and they set up their own tours. We all know that the virtual tours, your websites need to be, very user-friendly. And if you think about that, when you go, everybody loves Amazon, everybody loves PayPal and all those kinds of things because it's one touch, it knows your fingertip, right? I don't have to remember what my credit card things are and all that. And making sure that like our websites were not, we weren't trying to impress anybody with it, but that we make that experience user-friendly so they don't, it's not that speed bump that makes them say, I'm having trouble, let me go look at something else. But to figure out those things. But again, all these apps, like and third-party vendors, the Print with Me, there's just so many sprucing up. I mean, there's just so many of these different apps and third-party groups that are coming in that can really, as you say, we always talk about, the front office and the back office. You're wanting the front office to be fun, but the back office to be something you can measure, right? Mm-hmm. And there are all these tools now that we have at our fingertips to be able to do that. That's, I think, really exciting.
I think what Loren and I just realized was no one paid us to pump up their product like they did Donna. I mean, Donna's just like, this app and this vendor, and she's got, she was sponsored on this. Yeah. And I'm thinking no one emailed me and said, hey, if you say Print with Me, I'll cut you a deal. So I don't know, Loren, I don't know if you're about to pump anyone up here. But
well, if any of you are here, I will take a check. Yeah. Cash, anything.
I'm not. I'm going to do the opposite. And I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to be the old curmudgeon. We all know the one constant is change, but at the same time, I think the fundamentals are, from post-COVID, are really, really close to the fundamentals pre-COVID. And so, if I look at what we experienced, we saw some differences in our customer behavior from market to market, but that was primarily driven by the local municipality or the university kind of policy making and decision making. And so we didn't see concrete evidence of our customer really changing what they want that we think will be long lasting. And so our approach to the business right now is steady. And so there are no radical changes that we're making from an investment thesis perspective, from a really a product design perspective or from an operational perspective because of COVID. And so, sure, our customers loves tech. We totally get that, but we also think they crave relationship, and we think they crave community. And so, while I think that our operations will be enhanced by technology and some of the, maybe AI or some of these things, at the end of the day, we are trying to build community and a space where our customer can build relationships and connect. And we think that our site team is absolutely instrumental to that, and has been and will continue to be. And just a shout out to any of the Trinitas staff that are listening. They just did a tremendous job of that during COVID, and under extremely difficult circumstances. And I can't say enough how proud I am of how they did that, even with masks on their face. It's like, how do you engage with the customer when everyone's wearing masks and there's plexiglass and space requirements, all this stuff, but they remained focused on that mission of engaging with the customer and trying to build a relationship and create a sense of community. And I think at the end of the day, the companies that do that are going to be the companies that experience the greatest level of success.
Yep. I agree with Loren. I think obviously what an awesome shout out, and I know your team members listening, that's going to feel good, and I think speaks to your character and your heart for your team members, which is awesome. I think I agree with you on the relationship side, and that's where I see technology actually helping that. I think that we are an industry, and maybe even just people, we're just freaking cursed with busyness, just busy, and I think if you look at this kind of concept of like, what is it that only our on-site teams can do, and start with that and kind of work back, what we find is we just have all this bullshit that's stacked up on top of them. And the way we address technology, which I hope is the right way, I think the wrong way is, how many jobs can we cut? That's a really tough conversation, and probably a pretty toxic one for your culture. But if you start with the conversation of, what are you going to do with all these hours we give back to you via advanced technology? The answers are usually the right ones, which is, we're going to engage our residents more. Like Donna said, like the whole corporate support team, that's all they do is support one person whose job it is to engage the customer. That's it. Everything else we do is for that person. And if you say, okay, we're going to give you all your hours back so that you can actually engage that resident, it's like, that's awesome. Guess what else we can do? Train our team members better. People are generally engaged and stay at a company. I think, Donna, this was almost to your own culture of, people stay at companies in which there's opportunity and there's skill development, right? And so now we say, hey, manager, I think you actually do have a heart for your team. You've been so busy and trapped behind this computer that you've barely been able to do monthly check-ins and extra trainings and all this stuff we actually want to do. Well, now you can do that because we're continuing to make your jobs more efficient via advanced technology. And that's the things that we really like. It's not so much of the whole world's going to change and the on-site team's going to go away, quote unquote. It's more of, we're going to actually let you do the things that matter, which is all people related, our resident and our team. And we're going to spend all that extra time on those two things. And I think that is a real positive for our industry if we can pull that off.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think, all the technology that was there before the pandemic is still there. And I think we've learned how to use it better. I think the prospects have certainly gotten more comfortable with it. Not that they were uncomfortable with it before, but as far as on a larger scale, I think they've gotten more comfortable with it. I'm one of those guys that I never want to interact with somebody when I'm buying something. Like, Amazon's been the greatest thing for me. But when it comes to, a place I'm going to choose to live, this is just me personally, but I think there's certainly a lot of parents out there. I want to know that, someone's behind that computer screen that cares about me and wants me to be there as much as I want to be there. And yeah, I'm a little concerned that, some of our folks, that have now gotten used to letting the website and the ILSs do a lot of the work. That are they still putting in their marketing budget to be on campus for the housing fair? Is the university still going to be considering doing the housing fair? Because I think we've got to have those things still.
But but if you think about your own experience, like if I'm doing an Airbnb, if I'm doing one of these things, I don't necessarily need to talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want to be able to see pictures of it, understand sort of where it is and all that. But and you think you're old. I mean, I'm really old school. And if I still feel that way, then I got to feel like these young folks. By the time they get to our properties, they already know. They've shopped it. They've been on everybody's websites. They're very, very savvy. But you said one thing, Loren, that I wanted to comment on.
Was it smart or dumb?
It was brilliant.
Oh, okay.
But 2019 was an aberrant year. And I don't think any of us want to change our business plans or change anything based on 2019. I mean, there's that old same statement, don't let a crisis go to waste. And I think that there's some good things we can pull out of it. But, I mean, it was just a turn on your head kind of a year. I mean, for example, core properties, those properties closest to campus always lease up first, and they have the highest occupancies and the highest rent growth. This past year, from our data points, from our properties, they had the worst. They were the poorest performers of the different categories, and the reason's simple. Why would you pay a premium to live next to a closed campus, right? So I mean, so when we look at it, my thing on it is I think it's going to take a couple years for us to transition out of COVID. I mean, I think everybody's doing great now. Our numbers are changing, or closing, and we'll gaps close to what we were. But I still think that this has been a transition year. We've tried to figure out. Basically most of the properties were, not anywhere close to the occupancies they had. And if you talk about some of the folks that you've mentioned, they did a major. Just dropped the rates at the beginning of the year. I mean, that was almost a national program. So I think this past year, to a certain extent, has been just a one that you throw in the wind and you just try to figure out how do we have that be a transition year. But I think we don't want to do a lot of business planning changes based on 2019. I mean, I agree with you. I think that what kind of got us here is still good, sound business.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about vendors, and this is kind of a good opportunity because we've got a few in our audience, and we've got a lot to listen to this podcast.
And a lot that paid Donna to say their name.
Apparently so. So, going through this past year, and as you're seeing where things are headed over, the next 5 to 10 years, is there something that either services or actual products that vendors to our industry need to get focused on, need to make better, that you guys have encountered over this past year?
Well, I'll go first, and I spoke with Loren probably a year ago, and he was talking about some advancements in the development and construction space, and I do think there's a lot of opportunity there for knowledgeable developers like Trinitas to work with the vendor industry in order to continue to make advancements, not just operations, but the actual construction side of our business. And I think there's a lot of room there for vendors. I know on the multifamily side, there's been a few groups who tried to kind of tackle rising construction costs that didn't work too well, but just because it didn't work didn't mean it was a bad idea. So I do still think there's a lot of opportunity there. Wes, I'll kind of like pre-prime and pump your round table. I found it really interesting, the recent decision on the NIL, which is the name, image, and likeness, in which we'll be able to start interacting with student athletes. And if you think about businesses that should be interested in that, it's going to be student housing operators to say, hey, we've always kind of embraced this influencer business model on social media, and I know there's a few vendors that do that, but now that's going to really change a little bit. It's not just going to be the popular kid that has 1 million followers. I mean, you're going to have all these athletes now playing in the marketing space, and our industry really needs to figure out how we're going to create that marketplace, if you will, and what that's going to look like. And then finally, I think there's got to be something that kind of connects the full resident experience. And right now, what I've seen is, so you have AI, which is a little choppy still. You have the automated tours and the self-guided tours, and that's still kind of choppy. And none of that's a great experience. And I think Donna obviously called to some of the best, shopping experiences we have online. And that's just the simplicity, the logical flow. There's just so much that goes into consumer behavior. And I think the vendor partners that might help us the most are trying to figure out from text to lease, there's a lot that goes on that can really be disrupted by the technology side. And right now it just feels clunky, even with the vendor. And that's not against any one vendor. I just don't think anyone's really put together that entire front end experience that would make that just an enjoyable, shopping experience. So I think there's room there.
Yeah, so that's where our IT folks were saying, to have, so you've got an app, that helps you, for rent collection, you have, for opening your doors, for scheduling maintenance, for all these various things. But we need something that kind of connects it and that manages all of that, and so they interact with one another as opposed to them being just one-offs.
Yeah, this is a great question, and obviously there's a lot of prop tech out there. There's so much prop tech,
so much
that I can't even keep track of all the different potential tools that we could be considering. It literally is almost overwhelming, and that's most of those are startup or maybe late stage startup, and so there's going to be a lot that comes from that area over the next 5 and 10 years. That'll be very interesting to see how that evolves. But I'm going to plagiarize Alex's, I think, main point, and that is I think the greatest opportunity comes from that relationship building and community building side, because the real estate's important. It's super important, and having easy building access, that's convenient, so they don't have to carry keys. That's great. Having integrated maybe smart apartment technology, that's great. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is that sense of community and that relationship building. And I'm there is technology that's focusing on that right now, and I think that's probably going to be the most impactful to what we do. I'm also skeptical about some of the prop tech, and this is from my own personal experience of I built the smart home, and I'm now unwinding things that were built-in integration, where it's hard to have one master solution that handles everything, because most technology can't do everything well. And so one thing I think we have to be very careful of is kind of looking for that that panacea that ends up not being what we hoped it was, and then we end up damaging that customer experience because things didn't go well. So technology can be a blessing, but it can be a curse.
It's like what Donna said. You got locked out of your house because your phone died. You couldn't even get in the house, right?
Right. Well, just last night, we had storms roll through at home last night, and so my wife informed me that the lights were blinking in our house at 11 p.m.
Like all of the lights?
All of the lights were blinking, and my mother-in-law was going to be arriving to watch the kids this morning. So I spent an hour and a half last night rebooting our wonderful smart home system multiple times until I could make the smart home smart again. So it's anyway, there's a lot of opportunity there. It's going to be really cool to see how it evolves. But at the end of the day, we got to deliver that holistic experience.
Yeah. The prop tech flood has just been crazy and good for all these startups and a lot of these entrepreneurs and innovators, and just awesome to see what they're doing. But to your point, it's like death by option a little bit, where you have 9 people all this new startup pitching the same thing, and it's just I think the whole, and we know this from data, is the whole private equity world saw that there was this $1 trillion industry that no one really had cared about. And then it just flooded in. And I know a lot of people listening maybe in this room or work for prop tech companies, but It's almost like, don't take it personal that I haven't responded to your 7 emails, because like 9 other people just like you also sent me 7. So it's like, it's really hard on the operations side to figure that out. And what a lot of the prop tech guys are doing, and the vendors are going straight to the ownership groups, or they're kind of working around. So you get this just like jumbly, hard to manage infrastructure, which I do think in our on-site teams who are listening probably feel this the most, is there's so many new technologies that are just like, hey, ownership group wants to use XYZ, here you go. And it's like, there's no training. It's still kind of clunky, and it's creating some like short-term challenges. I agree with you, Loren, that over time, I think it's going to all work itself out, and there's going to be clear winners in the prop tech space. And there's going to be stuff that our on-site teams like to use and make their lives better. But in the short term, it just feels like a lot for everyone up and down the chain to like know which prop techs to engage with, and which vendors are ultimately going to win in this competition.
Great point. And technology is fragile. More fragile than dumb tech, or whatever the opposite of smart tech is. And the other thing is, you don't want to buy Betamax.
Yeah.
You don't want to build your property around Betamax and then find out that it was VHS, that made it.
Yeah.
Probably no one in this room is actually old enough to understand that analogy, except for Mark B. You want to. We got to be careful that you don't pick a technology that's no longer supported, 2 or 3 or 5 years down the road as well.
And not only that, but salespeople like to find people like me who are optimistic and know nothing about it, because you can sell it to me. But it's interesting to me that the people who are the least or the most averse to technological change are our IT people, because they understand.
They got to support it.
And all the issues that come with it. Whereas you can give me a concept, and I'm like, yeah, let's go with this.
So to move away from prop tech for a minute and talk about some other services, because you guys are now playing in this game a little bit with Turnco, and where you're kind of taking the a lot of that hassle off of the bidding process and finding the vendors, and you guys are supporting more than just the Cardinal properties with that. Any other type of I think of Valley Trash. When that came out, everybody was like, "Oh wow, this is a huge, compliment to what we're doing." Are there things like that you guys see?
I think what I've seen over time is that the best vendor solutions were either in partner or incubated at an operating company, and that goes way back. I was just talking to someone. They're like, "Well, we used to, we were at this company and we owned Court Furniture, and then we started it and we rolled it out." And you're like, "Oh, cool." And then we were at this company and we were at Archstone and we invented YieldStar, and then everyone wanted it, so we rolled it out. And I think that just speaks to the ability for an operator to test and prove a product. And the best vendors know that the on-site team who have to actually play with it and break it and figure out how it works, that's the best customer, right? And they're going to actually make sure that you don't make a Betamax. They're the ones who actually are going to make sure it works. And so what I've seen, and obviously we have the Turn Company, which is a great example, and our partnership and the launch of Agency 53, but we've always believed that operators make the best entrepreneurs in the space. And that's why, I've seen that, and I've seen a lot of great products. Back to the e-supply days. I mean, there's been so many companies that have been kind of incubated at an operator and then rolled out. And I think, and again, that doesn't have to be that way, but if you're a vendor who wants to go at it alone and then get us to buy in, I think it's a little tougher road versus saying, I partnered with this group, or I partnered with the Preiss company, and they were, they helped us create this product. That, as a competitor to the Preiss company, actually gives me a lot of confidence. Great, Donna's team's already, tinkered with it and figured out all the reasons it sucks and it's broken, and they helped fix it. That helps. So I like to either be a part of it myself or know one of our competitors that we respect has done the same thing.
Yeah. Any other ideas on other things that could be added as far as kind of value add services that maybe we haven't invented yet? Or
it's going to be an explosion. I mean,
so?
it just, you think about how fast changes are coming up and all the things that are happening. I mean, it's just happening very, very quickly.
Well, guys, this has been great. I appreciate it. But all good things must come to an end, and I've got round tables to get to. But I truly do appreciate the time that you guys put aside for this. The only other question I've got is for our other Carolinian here. There was a snake, a cobra that was loose in Raleigh. I just want to know, was it in your neighborhood? And is everybody safe? Are there any animals any pets missing or anything like that?
No, but we have lots of copperheads. Lots of copperheads.
I'd probably, at least with a cobra, it's about to spit in your face, versus a copperhead is. I had a dog that was bit by a copperhead one time, and it was not fun. So.
This is a big year for snakes. They're very plentiful.
Interesting. Well, guys, thanks so much again for being a part of this, and we'll make sure that in the podcast notes we've got links to your emails and everything, so folks can send you more emails on prop tech stuff that you could go through later. Well, guys, thanks so much, and to our audience here, thanks for joining us as well.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.